do people deeply resonate with the brand on like an emotional level? And within that, there's a whole lot of things, how loyal are they? How much they talk about your brand? How's your referrals? Like word of mouth, like there is those things that you can track with that. But we always obsess about how does our brand make people feel? And if we obsess about that, then those other things, they sort of like come as a bit of a byproduct.
You're listening to Inside Commerce, a weekly e-com strategy, technology and CX-focused podcast hosted by experienced digital consultants and re-platform specialist James Gedd and Paul Rogers. Get insights into e-com strategy and leading brands, hear from industry thought leaders and leading tech vendors with practical advice to help you improve your online CX. This episode is sponsored by Shopify. Another week, another really cool guest, cool brand, and interesting story we're going to share with you today. So I'm talking to Puresport CEO on lessons learned building a category-defining brand. So a little bit of back history, and then we'll get Dan to introduce himself and talk a bit more about the founder story and his path to CEO. But the business was founded in 2018 by professional rugby players. So me personally, as a massive rugby fan, I love stories like this. I find it very exciting. Two rugby players, Grayson, Hart, Adamash, were seeking natural alternatives to painkillers. I think anyone who's in and around rugby knows how much pain is involved in bodies over the course of a lifetime. So they pioneered like drug test safe CBD products for athletes. They've also been expanding the product range since the early days. They launched energy gels this week. We'll come on to that later. And Dan joined the founders very shortly after launch, moving to COO in 2022 and officially became CEO in 2025. He's also a professional rugby player. And the additional level of excitement for me to say, and play for England's sevens internationally, which is amazing. So there we go. That's my my rambling welcome. Warm welcome, Dan. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much. That is a very warm welcome. I appreciate that. I'm a washed up rugby player now, but was lucky to do that for a little while.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm not going to hijack this podcast because I could quite easily sit and talk to you about international rugby and what it was like, but we'll save that for over a beer one day, hopefully. Before we get into like the questions about the brand, the growth, and the tech and everything, do you want to tell us a bit about the founder story, your path to CEO, like how you got involved and why you got involved?
Yeah, so as you sort of said, the founding premise of the business was around, Grayson and Adam being addicted to opioid-based painkillers. Back then in rugby, and I came through that time as well. You sort of talk about like you could get any sort of painkiller cocktail that you wanted. Tramadols and these sorts of things were just given out in the changing room because the most important thing was that people were playing every week. It's kind of like you were an asset to the club. If you were playing well, regardless of shoulder pain or these sorts of things, it's like how do we get that person out there? So it was actually quite a bad time, for a lot of people with that. And there was a lot of, like early stages of addiction to that taking place. And that was Adam and Grayson's story. And they really sought looking for some more natural alternatives. There was lots of talk about CBD in the US at the time, nothing really happening in the UK. And when they started taking it, they had some amazing results, but it wasn't certified for drug tested athletes. So they said, well, let's be those people. Initially from a bit of like personal discovery of trying to order a few bottles themselves. And then that sort of rolled into Puresport. But what we always talk about is the founding premise of the business was really against that quick fix mentality. And that's sort of like something that they were both very drawn to, the fact of like, yes, I do have this shoulder pain or this knee pain, but actually just giving me this to get through the next 3 hours. And then I feel rubbish for the next 3 days. That doesn't feel good. Like, what are these solutions? What are these things that we can be doing that actually could be for the long term? So when I was playing rugby with Grayson at Bedford, in that year, it was 10 months after they started the business and they asked me to get involved. That's what I was really drawn to. I didn't know much about CBD. I knew a little bit more about business than they did because I had another startup that I was running alongside rugby that was kind of 3 years old. So I had a little bit of experience, not much. But what I was really drawn to was that quick fix mentality. And like, I'd say that's almost been the pattern of my life. I love sport. I love hard work. I think that humans are much more capable than we think we are. And I ultimately believe that if you show up, you put in the effort, you stick at it for long periods of time, then you will get good at stuff and you will get the results that you want. So this quick fix mentality mantra around the business, and then us ultimately rolling the business into this strapline for the long run, that was something that really resonated with me very deeply. And then we were kind of one of those lucky COVID businesses, to be honest, because we were both professional rugby players. We got furloughed because there was no rugby going on. So we were given 80% of our rugby salaries to basically, sit at home. And we used all of that time to just pile it into Puresport. And the more time we gave it, the more time it grew throughout that period. When COVID sort of finished up, we both had some time left on our contracts, but we decided not to go back and to pile it into Puresport full time. And then from there, it's just been a 8-day-a-week journey of figuring things out, sort of discovering where Puresport is going to sit in the market. But I think the thing about our business, which hopefully sort of shines through, is we've always been led by authenticity. And we've really felt in this first 5-6 years of Puresport, we wanted to build a brand that sort of had a foundation of purpose, because we believe ultimately, there's an opportunity for a really big winner in the category, a winner that sort of creates a lot of emotional connection to the brand, very community first. But in order to do that, we needed to set some really strong foundations to build a house on.
Yeah, I love that. The authenticity thing, and I think sometimes it's used in a like masking things way, but for brands that truly have an authentic story, I think it's really powerful. I was on a panel with the social media lead and ambassador at Salt, the electrolyte hydration brand, and there's a founder story that's very similar about somebody who came from a point of having their own challenges, medical, and building a like really like passionate follower base on, I think was it Instagram or TikTok? I can't remember which of the channels, because she was sharing lots of really useful content. She was building credibility, and that then translated into growing up the business. And it's having that credibility, isn't it? If people know that you know what you're talking about, and you can understand what could be driving their purchases, there's instantly a far greater trust.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Puresport was quite an interesting business in the way, because we're a young startup, and if you really look at Puresport over our lifetime, we no longer sell the founding product that the business was founded on. We initially were really big in rugby and then CrossFit, and now we've really transcended to running. The two founders aren't in the business anymore, and they've both exited the business. And we also have really moved into a wider sports nutrition category. And if you think about all of that stuff happening in a space of 5 years, that's a lot of stuff. And one of the things that people say to me is that it doesn't necessarily look like Puresport's been through a lot of that, like the brand and how we show up in the world and how we come across and all those, types of things. And what I say to people is that's because the power of brand and authenticity and all that stuff will really carry you through some of those things. Because as I sort of said there about the foundation of purpose and what we stand for, our deep message is we stand against the quick fix mentality. And that is, not only in supplements, but that's how people approach exercise. That's how they approach their diets. It's how people approach friendships or family relationships, all those sorts of things. We stand against all of that. And I guess under that umbrella and that umbrella of for the long run, that will that has today carried us through, a number of challenges that we've had.
Yeah, I really like that, because we are in an era where attention spans are falling and people are being trained to expect quick dopamine hits, or whether that's quick fixes or social, news snippets, and not getting into the depth. So I really do like that. And a question around because obviously you've got your background in professional sport, you've got a personal love and passion for it as well. How useful, or how is that used to galvanize people around the culture of the business? And I guess the link to that is, how do you stop that becoming evangelical? Because at the end of the day, you also have a business to run rather than building the cult, right? So how do you get that balance in driving that passion?
I'd say it's the only thing in the business that I'm good at. And I guess it's be my only really direct experience. So I love that stuff around the culture of the business. We talk in here that we're a high performing sports team. We're not a family business. We're not, happy clappy sort of thing like that. We're here, we show up, we work hard for each other. We're big on feedback. We're big on trust in the business, and that, I can trust to pass you the ball and all that sort of stuff. I've sort of been a big believer, or my experience has been that, getting an organization, a small group of people 100% behind an idea or behind doing something, even if you only believe in it 50%, is a really powerful thing. So I think there's so many startups who they're we've got these 3 options and we want to explore this and we're going to do some testing and these sorts of things. And obviously that's so important as you get into that next phase in the business and testing and stuff. But in that early stage, pick whichever one you think is the best, and just make everyone believe that you believe in it 100%. And I think that actually is so powerful. And that's kind of team sport, right? Like that underdog mentality. You could be losing by 15 points, 20 points, but you can come back, and getting everyone to believe in that. Like that's the bit about the business that I really, really love, to be honest.
What do Mattel, Victoria Beckham, Sennheiser, and Glossier all have in common? They power their businesses with Shopify. Shopify is the most innovative and scaled commerce platform on the planet. It also happens to have the best converting checkout on the planet. Shopify, powering the future of enterprise commerce. Find out more at shopify.com/enterprise.
Yeah, and I guess it's about building resilience into people, and giving them like a motivation as well, it is quite hard actually as you scale. It's hard to maintain that energy levels, and I've seen that in other businesses where you can get distracted from that and lose sight of what the values are. What you're one of the key things that you talk about is about wanting to build a category defining brand, and that's part of the trajectory of growth. Can you tell us what does category defining to you and to Puresport mean? And do you have other brands in related worlds that you aspire to?
Yeah, so when we think about category defining, we think about the purpose of the business. So have we been able to create a global movement of people who stand against the quick fix mentality and they resonate with our message? And I kind of did a LinkedIn post about this actually yesterday because someone said to me, what does that actually look like? And I sort of laughed and said, it's like a whole group of people that when they see each other around the world, and they know that they take Puresport or wearing Puresport, they've got the drink bottles, they kind of give each other a fist bump and they say for the long run to each other. And so when I think about that, somebody asked me in the investment, we did an investment round earlier this year, and one of the investors, the VCs, asked me, if there was a headline for Puresport on the front of the front page of the New York Times in 10 years time, what would it say? And within 3 seconds, I was just like, how Puresport inspired a global movement for the long run. And so when I think about category defining, I think about that. When we talk about a category defining revenue, the commercial reality of a category defining business, we talk about that being a 200 million revenue, multinational, wider portfolio sports nutrition brand. And when we think about those people in the category, that's your MyProteins, that's your bulks, Applied Nutrition's obviously a bit more bodybuilder type protein, but it's those having a seat at the table with those big players. When we think about category, but I think the thing that's interesting is when I look at all the other category defining brands, Apples, Nikes, Coca-Colas, like these brands, what we talk about is they don't just have a great product, they have true emotional connection to the brand. All of those brands, they really make you feel something. And all of the brands in sports nutrition, they don't. It's a very functional category. It's like, hey, here's this product that does that. And it's like 25 grams of protein. Do this, do that. So within that, and in any functional category that exists, the parameters for emotional connection to the brand are so much more limited, and things are much more driven by price and functionality and discounts and promotions, things like that. So when we look at sports nutrition, that's what it is. It's a functional category. And 5 years ago, we said, we're going to build the Nike of the supplement space, and people that really want to be a part of the brand and wear a Puresport t-shirt and carry their drink bottle around with pride and all those things. And people used to say to us, that can't be done in that category. It's a category that's driven by discount. And we sort of said, that's what we want to do. So we're going to try and do that. So when we think about, category defining, it's that. It's like, do people deeply resonate with the brand on an emotional level? And within that, there's a whole lot of things, how loyal are they? How much they talk about your brand? How's your referrals? Word of mouth, there is those things that you can track with that. But we always obsess about how does our brand make people feel? And if we obsess about that, then those other things, they sort of come as a bit of a byproduct.
Yeah, I really like that mentality actually, because as someone who has spent a lot of years exercising to varying degrees and varying types, and has taken supplements to complement that, most of the brands I bought from, it's purely transactional. There is no relationship. I have zero emotional attachment, and therefore I couldn't care less who I buy from. And that sounds really brutal, but there's no reason for me to go back to one over the other. And I've shopped from loads, bulk, MyProtein, you name it. I've probably shopped from every single brand that you track and look in competitor analysis. And And it does come down to price for me, because there's nothing beyond the transaction.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's our story, so it's like in when we talk about category defining, it's like, and I think this, we talk about building 100-year-old brand, but we're trying to think about a 10-year focus. In 10 years time, are people sat around talking like this of like, God, Puresport really like moved culture in the supplement space. They grew this community first brand. People love it. People are happy to pay a little bit more for their brand because they love it. And not only do they buy their protein, they're so proud to wear the hoodies and the t-shirts and the socks. I guess in a visual way, or if a conversation was taking place in 10 years time from now, like this, that's how they'd be talking about our brand.
Yeah, it's interesting. I see parallels with brands like Rafa, because what they did in the cycling and the apparel space was really smart, and how they built. We're coming on to community next, but that's the exact thing. Like, they're building out the community around cycling as an experience, not just as an exercise. Realizing that it's a social activity, building cafes into stores, all these things where actually you get experience wrapped around the commercial model. So let's talk about the community, because you've spoken about this quite a lot. I know when you were at Vivant's Pulse event earlier this year, you were talking about the importance of the community, but also about the fact that things like the running clubs that you guys do, and you go and you run with customers, and how that built and scaled. I know you're doing that on like weekends, so you're nurturing it. I'd love to know what role that community is now playing, but I guess the lessons learned of how do you build out that strategy? How do you actually create a community that cares?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so similar to about that leading with authenticity piece that I kind of mentioned there. I think there's a lot of people a lot smarter than me who build much bigger businesses and grow a lot faster, who are very good at reverse engineering things of like, hey, here's the outcome that we want. We want to do this X. What are those steps that we need to do? And I think that's how a lot of people approach community these days. They're like, oh gosh, community is the buzzword of the marketing for the last 3 years. We don't have community. We need to do it. So let's go back and do these steps because that's what everyone else is doing. Whereas that's never been our story. Our story was that we were washed up rugby players who were working out 2 or 3 times a day at rugby, and then rugby stopped and we went into COVID, and then we were just sat at a laptop 12 hours a day. And we sat around and we work like that, and we're just like, oh, this doesn't feel that good. We need to do something. So that started with a few lunchtime runs that led on to a few customer runs. And then that's how the Puresport community has grown. And I don't show up to those things every Saturday to run with people because I think it's good for the business. I do it because I love it. I was there on Saturday up at Hackney. We had 150 people there for the gel launch. And it's like my favorite part of my week. So when we think about what I always say to people who ask me about how they grow community in their business, I always say to them, like, what is it that you're trying to do? But like, what is authentic to you guys? And I actually love the story of, a guy, Stubble & Co. Backpacks. And, I don't know if you know them. They're like a really great backpack company. I was chatting to him and he was like, oh, his community person was like, maybe we should do a run club. And he said to him, oh no, well, everyone's doing run clubs. Like they said, there's a run club at every bakery and cafe and, whatever. He's like, well, we need to do something that's authentic to us. And they came up with this idea that they would be the company that did the bag drops at the run clubs. So they set up this backpack, tent at the run clubs, because that's a huge problem at run clubs, is where people put their bags and how it all gets sorted and all of that stuff. And I was just like, that is just such a great, authentic way to tap into community, because these things are happening. You guys are a backpack company. You can run it. So you're there, you're fist bumping everyone, you're having that connection. So I think that's a really good example of like how you got to approach of like what's authentic to your business. Like for us, it's become the heartbeat of our business. And this gel campaign, which maybe we'll talk about, has been a great example of that. We're doing gels because people ask them for us. And how we design the gel is how people used to talk to me about the gel. I'd be leading these runs. They'd be telling me it's too complicated. They're telling me they don't like the taste. They're telling me they don't like the texture. They're telling me that they're getting gut issues. So it's like, okay, cool. Let's just go away and focus on those 4 things for people. Over the last 12 months, we've done about 20 rounds of testing of taste, texture, flavors, making sure people don't have gut issues with over 1,000 people in our community. Like people talk about, oh, we've built this product for our customers. Like our customers actually built the product. We were taking sample teaspoons up to Hackney and run community runs every week and getting people to try them. And they'd fill out a type form and chatting to each other and just hearing those conversations, like that genuinely has shaped the product. Then 3 weeks ago, before we hit the green light on the big run that we were doing, we sent out 1,000 samples, 500 people, one of each flavor, to be like, hey, can you just go out and run with this and just make sure it's right? Make sure we've got it to where we want it to go. And they were unbranded and people were running around and doing them on TikTok and trying them and giving us feedback and stuff. And then we've sent out a survey. In that survey, 90% of people loved the taste, 91% of people loved the texture, and 96% of people said they didn't get any gut issues. We got that type form back and we hit the green button. We put them into print. They were printed 2 weeks ago. We sorted everything out and then we launched them on Tuesday. And then like all these people are bought into this idea or this vision of what this thing would be because, you know, effectively they've made it. So I think that's one thing about brand and community. I also think the one thing that people don't talk to is like the talent that you're able to attract to your business. If you're doing something that's genuinely good for people and people like that's in line with people's, you know, own sport exercise goals and, you know, all those sorts of things. Because that's the first thing that anyone speaks to me on any interview thing. You know, we've been doing some interviews lately. We brought in some senior leadership people and they just all say to me, oh, the community is amazing. Like, that's amazing. I love that you're like, out doing this and doing that. So I think there's a whole lot of intangibles, but in terms of a direct tangible, that product launch has been a good one.
Yeah, amazing. And you, alongside like the community, you also work with influencers or ambassadors, I think you call them. And that trusted by athletes bit is really important as well for that credibility. So can you talk us through like how that piece works? Like, I guess, how do you identify, how do those relationships get built and what role do they play in your, either in the community or just your general like go-to-market?
Yeah. So most of those people start as customers. And I genuinely mean that, you know, the amount of people that we've spotted in the Shopify orders and then being like, oh my gosh, you know, George Mills buys our products. Like, let's message him, you know, messaging George, but hey, we've seen you've put in 4 orders recently. Like, you know, we'd love to be, you know, work something out with you. So, and I think that's a really authentic place to start on that. I think, you know, we've always talked about building products that are used by world-class athletes, but accessible to everyday people. And, you know, we think that so much of like the way in which supplements are communicated and stuff like that is just so complicated. And so, you know, one of the things that, you know, like exactly as you say, in terms of that credibility, that trust, like George Mills is drinking our electrolytes before he goes out for the Olympic final, in, Paris last year, you know, and then people are using the electrolytes at Hackney on the stand on a Saturday morning. So that like link between those two things we think is really important. The way that we pick those people is we pick people who are genuinely aligned with our brand, but we're also, you know, we sort of like, we're a real underdog type brand. I guess the best example is like, the All Blacks aren't an underdog, but they have something about them. You know, within the team, there's more characters. You know, the way that they play the game is a bit more less rigid, you know, and we talk about that at Puresport. Like, does this person have a bit of character about them? Do they have something outside of their sport, a bit of grittiness, a bit of a story, a bit of like community give back about them? So we're always trying to look for people who aren't necessarily just the shining lights of the sport, super clean cut, you know, etc. And they've got something about them.
Nice. And there's obviously a lot of work that's gone into the community aspect, to the influencers, ambassadors, and with everything you learn as you go through this process, what really works. If there's one thing that's really like had a pronounced impact in like how you've gone about doing this, what's the thing you would like highlight to listeners? Is it about that personal outreach to individuals and make it a personal connection, or is it something different that's had a pronounced impact?
I actually would say it is that personal relationship piece, right? Because, you know, it's social media reach and influence and those things. It is pretty commoditized these days, you know? And when you go to somebody and say, hey, we'd love to be a part of your brand, like we're on really tight budgets right now, we can give you £200 a month, for example. and then My Protein saying, hey, I'll give you 500 a month. The only thing that's going to, potentially help you win that thing is if they deeply connect with your brand and what you're doing, and they want to help you with that, but also they have a genuine personal relationship with somebody in the brand. And I think especially in that phase 0 to 5 or 0 to 10, whichever phase, people think that is for them, is how can you do stuff to win or get in front of eyeballs that other people can't? And that was a USP for us. But I'd say it wasn't just a USP because of the person. Like, that was a very important part, but I think it's also a USP because of the brand. And, I think cool is such an intangible thing, like what makes something cool and why it's cool. But Puresport has always been perceived as cool. And I think back to this authenticity piece, but also, when people resonate with the quick fix mentality, not everyone does. Lots of people love quick fix mentality. Lots of people are consuming it every day. They want to go on some diet that's going to give them a 6-pack in 3 weeks, and they want to go and do a Zempic, or they want to do all sorts of stuff, off they go. But for the people that it resonates with quite deeply, because they're like, oh yeah, that's not for me. I don't like that. And that's why running's great, because running is, you just got to keep showing up, and it does get easier. But sometimes you can be the fittest you can be, and you go out and run 5K and it just sucks for some reason. It doesn't make sense, but it builds your resilience as a person. So I'd say, it's tough to say I'll build something cool that people want to be a part of. It's easy to say that, but cool's very intangible. But I think that was a real USP for us as a business, and continues to be a USP for us in terms of those relationships and who we work with.
But that resonates to me, because I get really frustrated with this. Just do this 3 times a day and you'll have abs like me, YouTube stuff. Because I watch a lot of YouTube. I love watching the people like Eddie Hall, and there's loads of martial artists doing all these really crazy stuff, showing you what they do and how they stay fit. And that's cool. But then there's lots of people hawking, like you say, a quick fix. And it just, to me, it's nonsense. I'm 49. I've exercised all my life, and I'm with you on that. I can be at my fittest. For the last 2-3 years, I've been doing kickboxing, personal training once a week, and it's accelerated my aerobic fitness. And then I can have a day for no reason where I feel shit and lethargic, and I can't get into it. And I think you're right. There's a lot of people who just want something that makes sense and they can associate with and go, right, you're not bullshitting me. Yes, you're trying to sell to me. That's fine, but you're not bullshitting me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that we say to people is supplements are what they say on the tin. They're a supplement. So step number 1 is, are you exercising weekly? Step number 2 is, are you eating great food? If the answer to both of those questions is no, or either of those questions is no, go back to step 1. But if you're exercising weekly and you're in a good routine with that, and you're eating great foods, and the next step, you want to look into some supplementation that's going to help with your performance and do various things to you depending on what it is, then we'll have a conversation. But if somebody comes to me and says, oh, hey, I'm not sleeping very well, have you got something for sleep? I'm like, well, how much, what's your bedtime routine? Are you exercising every day? Because that's going to help. What time are you eating dinner? These sorts of things. Okay, if all that stuff is good and it's a genuine sleep or staying asleep issue, yes, magnesium can help. But if you're not doing those other things, they're going to be way more beneficial to you. And the 3 things supplements are our commercial vehicle to grow our business, and to get our message out and to reach more people. But what we really stand for is put good things in your body, exercise, and have meaningful social connection with other humans. That is the ecosystem to health that we believe. And if you do all those 3 things really well, we believe you're 99% of the way to, living a much more healthy life.
Yeah, I really like that. It's because that leads to, I've had a conversation with lots of brands recently about what makes people come back and buy again. And there will always be price conscious people who will come back because you're on offer. That you've got that. But to build true longevity in relationship, there has to be a reason for people to come back. And if somebody is saying to him, look, this is when and why you need this product, rather than just buy it. If they just buy it and it does nothing, you've lost that customer, because they're going to say, well, I've wasted my money, I'm not going to come back to you. So I really like that. Let's move on to the commercialization side of this, because, you're you're CEO, you're growing a business, you've had investment, you've obviously got commercial numbers to hit, but the community aspect and that social side is massively important to that growth. That's hard to, because you've invested a lot of time, effort, and money in building that. It's then hard to look at how you monetize that without losing sight of what makes it valuable. So I'd love to hear, like, what challenges are you facing when you're trying to, I guess, monetize the investment you're making?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I mean, lots of challenges. I think, like, we're getting better at understanding the metrics that we should be tracking around community and a feeling of the brand, you know, true customer lifetime value, repeat purchases, all those sorts of things that we talk about around that loyalty of those customers. But one of the things that I think about, in line with what you sort of just said there about people coming back, is over the next 5 years, every single person who exercises will engage in some form of sports nutrition, whether that's a hydration product, whether that's a performance product, a sleep product, or protein. You know, everyone's going to have something. So it's like, how do we be that brand of choice that people, when they want to make that decision, they want to do that? So first of all, we need the product portfolio to meet everybody's needs across what they want. And we're trying to build a product portfolio for everything that people need for before, during, and after running. And then probably over the next 5 years, exercise, but initially focused on running. And how do we show up in the places in which those decisions have been made? Because you can grow the most emotionally connected brand in the world, but if you're not side by side with the person you're fighting when that decision's been made, then you're not gonna win. So for us, the reason I say that is, like, we have really great awareness, you know, unaided and prompted awareness in the market. We've done some good research on that. But in order to capture that awareness and that feeling of community and what people think about the brand, you need to be in those places in which they're purchasing. So on some of the shelves and some of the retailers, you know, a good Amazon storefront where 40% of supplements are being bought in the UK at the moment, because actually only 15% of people buy on brands' websites when it comes to buying, you know, supplements. So I think where we've done a really great job of building the foundations of the brand and community, those sorts of things over the last 5 years, and it's been tougher to track outside of some of those bits. I think the real bit's going to come in the next 5 years of, you know, when we go up against Science and Sport and Holland and Barrett, for example, how many people are choosing Puresport running gels over Science and Sport gels because we've built this community first brand. They've seen us on socials. And one of the things that I don't know if you know about, like, System 1 and System 2 thinking, but yeah, System 1 thinking is like all our emotional decision making. Like, we don't know why. We see something, we think we've seen it on socials, we've maybe seen an ambassador take it, etc., and we're drawn to that thing. We make 95% of our decisions on System 1 thinking. System 2 thinking is like very functional type of thinking. So if I sat around a table, it's like, hey, why do you want to buy a Puresport? People would talk about the functional things. Like, oh, I like this one because it's clean, it's science backed, it's got this ratio or whatever, because they think that's what people want to hear. But the reality is, when I go into a store and I look at 2 chocolate bars, like, lots of that is just about the emotional part about why I'm drawn to one over the other. So I think the power of community and the power of brand, we'll really hopefully start to see that over the next 5 years, and we'll be tracking that, like rate of sale in store and you know, those things as we go more omni-channel. But I think, you know, in consumer these days, it depends what people are trying to do. We're trying to build a 100-year-old brand, but yeah, if you're trying to get a big exit, you have to ask yourself, am I building something that Unilever or Nestle couldn't build themselves? Because if the answer is no, then they're going to be like, you know, like, can they get a single SKU business? Can they ramp performance marketing? Can they get wider distribution of that product? Well, yeah, they can. That's what that's kind of what they're good at. But can they do what we're doing? Well, no, they can't. Well, that then becomes interesting, because then they're like, well, if we can't do that, we're going to have to buy that. So I think that that's something, depending on people's outcomes of where they're trying to get to, is an interesting way to think about it. You know, could one of these big brands do this? And Wild deodorant is probably the best consumer acquisition that's happened in the UK in recent times. And they did exactly that. They built something that those big guys couldn't build, and Unilever went and bought it for 250 million. So yeah, I think that community, it's very hard in the start to really track that. But I think as you get older, it really will start to pay dividends.
Yeah, nice. And you talked about your new product launch, the energy gels. you said that before we started recording, you said it's gone well. It's been a good launch, which is great. Excited to see how that lands as well. But you've obviously gone through lots of different product launches over the years as you've expanded the range. Can you share some like insights to our listeners? Like, what have you learned over the years about what makes a successful product launch?
So I've done 28 product launches. I actually did a post on LinkedIn about it a few days ago saying 26, but I'd forgotten to. So I've done 28, and about 16 of those we don't sell anymore. No, actually more than that. Probably, 18 of those we don't sell anymore. But I think... I think that's so. In terms of like a successful product launch, if we ignore the NPD part, because the NPD part is sort of what I talk about. Do your customers actually want the product? What is it about the one, etc.? Like that's a separate bit. But a successful product launch, and something that we've been really bad at, is really learning from those mistakes that you make each time. And I know that really sounds simple, but where we've really elevated the product launch process is when we've sat down, 2 or 3 days post-launch and being like, hey, here's all the things that went really well, but here was the blind spots that we had. And we like when we were doing these product launches one year in 2023, we had quite a number. We did about 8 because we launched various different mushroom products and stuff. They're all similar stuff, but we kept on making very similar mistakes, or like missing things, or not changing international pricing. So it was like not rounded. It was, it went to the cents because it did its own conversion. We, images being not resized properly, all these like little things, and just making that list. And then, so now we just have this checklist of, hey, right, here's product launch. Here's all the things, boom, 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 boom. And as you've grown the team and there's more resource, that obviously helps because someone's looking after the website and someone's looking after the emails as opposed to when it's, you're kind of doing 3 or 4 things each. But that has been one thing that's really changed for us. And also those project plans in the build up, they're really, really boring in a startup. No one wants project plans. No one wants to sit in meetings and be like, you're doing this, you're doing that. But actually, honestly, it helps so much. We talk about here, it's again, another All Black sort of thing, but structure creates freedom. Like having 80% structure is going to give us that 20% freedom to play what we see in front of us. And everybody here in the business has the license, if they see a great opportunity, to take that, a quick tap or a play down the short side. But that structure is what gives us that. And we really fought that for a long time, thinking like, we don't want to be bureaucratic. We're kind of going to roll with it. But my piece of advice to that is like, adopt that early and buy into it, because it helps everyone.
I love that. Structure creates freedom. That's a really nice, concise way of saying it. I'm 100% on board with this. I spent a lot of my life trying to make people be really dull like me, and having structure and checklists and processes are really important. But then you're right. You give people that structure, but you let them execute. You don't sit there and micromanage them and make it so laborious that it demotivates them. But when you're launching something, whether it's technology or product, if you don't have that checklist, it's impossible for the brain under pressure to remember every single last thing and not have a gotcha somewhere that's going to trip you up.
Yeah. And there's still stuff that goes wrong, but one of the other things that I've really come to know, and it's a bit separate to this, but just about leadership is, as people I think the most important trait in leadership is consistency. And that's both consistency in your own performance of how you show up in the world and how you perform, but it's also consistency in your mood, and people can't deal with this in business. They can't deal with somebody who comes into the office one day and they're super low down and it's affecting everyone in the mood. And then the next day you're the most buzzing character and people just don't know where they stand. So when you come through the door each day, they're like, which version is it? But the best leaders are those ones who are just, really consistent. And yes, there's a little bit of up and down, but people know what they're getting. And I think that's the same in the startup. Like stuff goes wrong. I say to people, this job is 4 days in the world, 4 days a week is the best job in the world. And the other 3 days, the whole business is on fire. But because stuff goes wrong every single day, and especially around launches and frustrations and these sorts of things. But it's just about knowing that that's going to happen, being consistent. I really love, there's a thing that the Marines use around, they kind of talk about the 5 stages of grief, how actually that's very, you can actually use that. So like, I don't know actually what the 5 stages are, but it's like anger, denial, grief, etc. And then you move to acceptance. and they sort of talk about in bad situations, the quicker you can move to acceptance, the quicker you're going to be as a good decision maker, but, people hear about this bad news that we've missed the delivery, and then they're angry, and then they're in denial that the delivery might come, and who do we need to ring or whatever, and then they're annoyed about it, and then they move to acceptance, and then they start making some good decisions. So some of the best leaderships or some of the most resilient people are the people who can move to acceptance very, very quickly, start making some decisions, cool-headed. This has happened, like, let's move on. That was something that a guy from the Marines came and talked to us about that I thought that was really relevant for, especially startup businesses.
Yeah, I think that it's relevant for any size business, Dan, because I do a lot of, I run a lot of projects helping people through like technology implementation, replatforming, and all of those have points in the project where things go wrong. It's inevitable. It's people and technology. There's going to be a problem. The question is, what are the likely problems and how do you mitigate that risk? But when you're right, when there is a problem, it's take the emotion out. Like, have your 5 minutes of swearing at a wall. That's fine. But what's the impact? What's the resolution? How do we get through that? It's happened. Don't spend days fuming over it because it will not change the fact that it's happened.
Yeah. And it's easier said than done, obviously. But yeah.
Your point about that leadership, about the emotion, but I think that's so important though, is because it's all right to be really, really, really pissed off. But if you make everyone in the business know that, then that creates a negativity that spreads out, and then people feel uncertain. So you're right, and being annoyed by things is fine. It's allowing that annoyance to fester that's not good. One thing I did want to talk to you a little bit about is the subscription side, because I think you said to me subscription was around 50% of the business. Is that about how I'd love for you, like people listening, there are lots of people we know in our audience who either are subscription businesses or are contemplating maybe introducing it. But what's the tech stack you use to run your subscriptions?
So we use Skio to run the subscription. We're on a Shopify store. We use Skio to run the subscriptions. Then outside of that, like the CRM piece of it, we use Klaviyo and Attentive. And then there's in terms of some of the like add-on checkout pieces, we use is it Rebuy? Post-purchase add-on. Rebuy after people have checked out, and we let them add on to their subscription if they'd like some things like that. I think when we really looked into it about 18 months ago, our subscription customers were 2.5 times more valuable than our one-time purchase customers. And we know, like you talked about for your own personal experience, we're in a hyper-competitive category. And often it's a category that doesn't really lend itself to subscription. But I think if we're going to build what we want to build and that customer loyalty and people being a part of the brand and stuff, like how do we play in that? So the things that we've found really successful is the most recent test that we've done, and we were kind of landed at this moment in time, is that sort of deeper discount on the first time to get the product in people's hands and just get them trying it. I think one of the biggest things that we face in supplements is people are like, is that going to work? Do I want to spend £30 on this box of electrolyte sachets? I don't know what they taste like, and are they going to work? So trying to mitigate that, a little bit, and then really using what we've kind of, the brand superpower of things of, caps and drink bottles and socks and all these sorts of things, which help people like buy into the brand more, and they're proud to rep it, and they get a bit more of understanding of how we are. Trying to be really good on the education in that first window of how they use the products, etc. But yeah, that's the tech stack we use, and we've seen some really good, success, from that and that particular offer. The other thing that we have moved towards is rolling people into a bi-monthly subscription. So they get 2 deliveries every 2 months, or it depends on the frequency of that product. And for us, that's really great, because one of the most expensive things in D2C these days is the shipping, element that never really came down after COVID. And, so shipping a £30 product and it's costing you £4 or, £5 when you've got the box and all that sort of stuff, it just makes the unit economics of that really, really tough, especially when you're giving free shipping to subscription customers. So we've done it as bi-monthly. Also, it's an eco thing for us. We are a brand that's very, eco-conscious. If we can put 2 deliveries into one and make that one delivery, then that's a benefit. And within that as well, then we use refill bags, we use other things like that. So there's just a number of like unit economics that stack with that, which has meant that, that's really improved that, subscription, payback time, how much how much revenue we get off people in the first 90 days as opposed to the first 120 days and a few metrics like that in which we follow. That's meant that it's had some good success for us in the last few months.
Nice. And do you do anything around content for people who are in subscriptions? So I've as a shopper, but also working with brands and looking at how they try and engage people between cycles, because what you've done makes so much sense. One of the challenges is keeping people educated about the value and to check that they are getting the value, or are they in the right thing, or actually should they be swapping to a different product? Do you have any approaches to that for how you check that people are getting the value from the product during the subscription cycles, and get feedback loops, know whether they've actually chosen the right thing in the first place?
Yeah, so I think the brutal thing about subscription is just the reality of it. Every time you contact subscribers, people cancel because it's given them that reminder that they're on a subscription. And I think that's the real fight in subscriptions. And I know some wildly successful subscription businesses who will just say to you, don't contact people. And that's really brutal, especially for us as a brand, right? Because we're like, no, we want to tell people about what we're doing and why it's cool to be a part of Puresport and what the products are going to do for them and stuff like that. So we try and really have that balance. I think we did do some good trialing with sorry, I can't actually remember what it's called. But it was a Shopify plugin where it would send people a reminder 2 days before, and it would just sort of say, hey, this is coming. You've got an opportunity here to, it wasn't actually, we didn't actually have in the email an opportunity to cancel, but people obviously could come through and manage their subscription, but it gave them an opportunity to skip that one. It gave them an opportunity to pause it for a week, gave them an opportunity to add any products or swap a flavor out if they wanted to swap it. And we did see some really good, retention data on that of people who were, adding on products or swapping products, and it had this predictor about people that probably would have cancelled otherwise. So that was something. But yeah, in terms of educating about the products and what we're talking about, we're always trying to do that with everybody. It's not just our subscription customers, and it's kind of like what I said to you before of everyone's going to take nutrition at some point. They're going to sign up to the next half marathon, or they're going to sign up to a high rocks, or they're going to do something. So it's when they do that and they decide, oh yeah, I need this at this moment in time, why would I pick Puresport? And we think that they pick us because of some of those things that you're talking about there.
Yeah, it is really that whole when you do and don't contact subscribers is really, really challenging, because some products are very easy to cancel. What I've seen is when people have a personal connection to what they're buying, they're doing it for an outcome rather than if you've got a subscription for something which you're not dependent on, it's far easier to cancel. They'll actually, you know what? Yeah, I didn't really want that anyway, or I don't need it. But what I've seen work really well is the flow optimization when somebody's trying to cancel, of then trying to bring in the education, the support, the guidance, and can we help you? Is there something else that's better for you? And that seems to work reasonably well in the supplement space. But yeah, it's challenging to get it right.
Yeah, one I really want to do is I saw another brand do this of when you're going through that flow just before you cancel, they offer you a 15-minute call. It might be Wild Nutrition, they offer you a 15-minute call with a nutritionist or a health specialist to just sort of say, hey, is there a reason you're canceling? Speak to this person, and they might be able to mix up your products or change. And I'd really love to do that with, we have a sports scientist, Dr. Sam. It probably wouldn't be right for him, but trying to get a group of, maybe PhD students or something like that. And just sort of give, because whenever we do TikTok lives or we get Sam down to events, people love asking about, their race day nutrition and what they should be having and how things work. And they're just so interested. Yeah. So having a 15-minute chance with someone, to say, oh, hey, you're canceling your magnesium. Why? And it's, because of this reason or whatever. It's, actually, maybe that's not this issue. Maybe that's a hydration issue. But again, in our Puresport, very candid way of hey, if it's just a 15-minute chat and you want to chat about this and you're still not right, come back to us when you're next thinking about these things. I think that would be really cool, but it takes a bit of setting up.
Yeah, it does. And actually that kind of intervention piece, if it's done in a helping people way, even if the cancellation goes through, you're going to learn what's driving the cancellation. And that feedback loop is going to help any day. So yeah, interested. I'll look forward to hearing about that pilot whenever that's priority list.
Well, I know that Space Goods, who are also in our investment portfolio of Ben, and they've been, hugely successful in scaling that business, and the retentions for a business like that. It's not a one SKU business, but it was a one SKU business for a long time. It's retention's like key, like how long are they keeping people for and how many bags they're staying for and all of that. And I think one of the things that they trialed, they tried a few different things. I know that they tried when someone took a subscription, they rang them in the first week to say, thank you very much for subscribing. How's your first few days been, etc. And they were testing that. And then they were also testing sending a video playing of the founder, Matt, just before people cancel, like a video about him, about the brand, and answering some of the common subscription problems around if you've got too much product, you can pause this, or a few things like that. I don't actually know how that went, but I know that was something else that they were testing.
Interesting. Look, Dan, thanks so much for joining us today. I've really enjoyed this. All of these podcasts, I could carry on asking questions all day long, but you have a business to run. For anyone who wants to find out more about Puresport and its products, I strongly recommend going to the website. It's lots of fun browse around. Also, Dan's contact details are on the podcast landing page. But Dan, thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure, James. No, thank you so much. It's been really great to chat. And next time we can do a full hour on sport.
Yeah, amazing. I look forward to seeing the continued success of Puresport.
Thank you.
You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast, hosted by experienced consultants James Gerd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders, and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience, and tech. Discover what the latest trends really mean and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-com strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode.